Hello, macroeconomists. Welcome back to Hermenomics. Today, basically, what we're going to cover is CPI. We're going to look at correcting economic variables. We're going to look at unemployment and also GDP. So we're going to do a little bit more practice problems today. The goal is to understand all this material and be able to carry out the calculations. And all these practice examples are going to be very similar to the stuff that you are going to encounter on the final worksheets and other future assignments in this class. So again, just take notes. Anytime you feel like you need to pause the video to work out the problem, I encourage you to do that. It'll make your life a lot easier, and then you can see where you went wrong, and you can mirror what I'm doing in this class. So the first thing we're going to start with is GDP. So I already posted a video on this. Again, it's just another practice problem to give you guys a little bit more practice with it. So GDP, again, this is the gross domestic product. We look at consumption, investment, government spending, and net exports. Net exports is exports minus imports. Now, here in our example, we're only producing two products, pens and books. So pens, books, that's the only stuff in our basket. So we have 3 years, 2011, 2012, 2013, and I denote the base year as 2011. So just make sure you have that somewhere on the side. The first question, so if this was a multiple choice question, it would ask you, what's the nominal GDP in 2012? So nominal GDP, again, is just your price and quantity of the two products multiplied by each other, and you add them together. So it would be price times quantity added by price times quantity. So all right, so I carried out the math. So we're looking at 2012. We're going to just look at this row. It's 3 times 120, and then 12 times 70, and you add those two together. So for your nominal GDP in 2012, it's $1,200. Now for the second question, your real GDP for 2012. So now when we look at real GDP, the whole goal is to keep prices constant. So real GDP is a change in output. That's what it measures. Nominal GDP is just using current prices and current quantities. Real GDP, we hold price constant. Now, we're holding price constant based on our base year. So our base year is 2011. What I always do is just circle it in. If you're given a worksheet or if you're given it on a test, just circle in what it is. Now, we want to calculate the real GDP in 2012. So it's going to be 3 times 120 and then 10 times 70. So now if you carry out the math, again, I just wrote it down here. It's $1,060. So we have our nominal, we have our real. Now to calculate our GDP deflator, again, GDP deflator is nominal divided by real multiplied by 100. So we have nominal, we have real. So it's 1,200 divided by 1060 multiplied by 100, and you should get 113.2. So GDP deflator helps measure overall change in price throughout an economy. So again, if you do the math, you get 113.2. And a trick question will always be, well, what is your GDP deflator in your base year? You should always know, again, we talked about this in class as well, it's going to equal 100, always. So it equals 100. Now, if I were to ask you, what's the change from 2011 to 2012? How have prices changed? So if you know that base year deflator equals 100, you're going to compare 100 to 113.2. All right, so now this question asks the percent change in price from 2011 to 2012. Now we have a deflator for both years. Again, base year is always going to be 100 no matter what. Our deflator in 2012, we calculated that before. It's 113.2. Now you're going to use a growth rate formula. So it's your most current year subtracted by your previous year, divided by your previous year, multiplied by 100. And what we get is 13.2%. So this is a positive value. So from 100 to 113, you obviously see the number increase. So prices have increased. Now the change in price it increased by 13.2%. All right, so now what we're going to talk about is CPI. This is Consumer Price Index. This is basically, if you think of an average consumer, the BLS does a study. They do use a survey in order to calculate what people are consuming. So they create this basket, so to speak. And our goal is to carry out these different steps to know what CPI is in that given year. So with CPI, we can track how prices have changed. So very similar to the deflator, we can see what's happening over time in our economy. You can compare different dollar values at different time periods, as well as overall price change. So here are the steps. You want to compute the cost of each year's basket. So each year, or you'll have certain goods that are going to be in a basket. You need to calculate the overall cost. Then you want to identify the base year. And from there, to calculate the actual CPI, it's the basket cost of the current year, so whichever year you're looking at, divided by your base year cost. And then you're going to multiply by 100. You're going to be given a value. Now you're going to compare this to other CPIs. Now your CPI in your base year will also always equal 100. Now, after we have the CPI for every single year, we can also calculate inflation. Now, we're going to use our growth rate formula again, or a percent change formula. It's CPI2, so the most current CPI, minus CPI1, the CPI furthest away from you, so the year furthest away, divided by CPI1, multiplied by 100. Again, this will show us the inflation rate, very similar to the GDP deflator formula that we used on our GDP portion. So we're going to go over our practice problem right about now. So here's our practice problem. We're going to assume that we have 3 years, 2011, 2012, 2013. Our base year is 2011. The two products that we're going to assume that our consumers purchase is beef and pork. So our basket only consists of beef and pork. Our first question, again, this would be a multiple choice question too, to calculate CPI in a given year. So CPI in 2011, again, we know the base year is 2011. So by default, we should know it equals 100. So before we even get there, we're going to do the calculations just so you guys trust me. So we're going to be just looking at this first row. So 2 times 100 plus 1 times 100, which equals 300. Now our base year, so the cost of the basket is 300. We're going to divide it by the cost of the basket itself, which is 300 multiplied by 100. And what this is going to give us is 100. So our CPI in 2011 is 100. Now we're going to calculate the CPI for 2012. Now we're going to look at this row. We want to first calculate the cost of the basket. So the cost of the basket is going to be 2.5 multiplied by 90. And then you're going to add 0.9 times 120. Now, the cost, it comes out to be 333. Now, we know the cost of our base year is 300. Again, we calculated that earlier. That's this calculation right here. That equals 300 by itself. That's just the cost of the base year basket. So it's 333 divided by 300, multiplied by 100, and what you're going to get is 111. So now you know the CPI in 2011 and 2012. Overall, we can see that the prices are increasing. Now, if I ask you specifically, how much did these prices increase, or how much is this inflation? We can calculate the inflation through our CPI. So it's going to be CPI2, which is the year closest to us, 2012, minus CPI1, which is the year furthest away from us. So it's going to be 111 minus 100 divided by 100, multiplied by 100. And what you should get is 11.1%. That's how much prices have grown over time. All right, so the next portion is going to be correcting economic variables. Here we have different dollar figures from different time periods. So if we want to convert different incomes in the past to a certain amount today, we can. So the formula is the amount in today's dollars, or the most current year, equals the amount in year T dollars, so the previous year or whatever year we're looking at, the year furthest away from you, multiplied by the price level today, divided by the price level in year T. So just as a hint, price level equals CPI. So I'll always give you the CPI. So the price level today is the year closest to you. Price level in year T is the year furthest away from you. So we'll do a practice problem next. All right, so here's our practice problem. It's how much is $10,000 salary from 1995 worth in 2019 dollars? I give you your CPI of 1995 is 131. CPI of 2019 is 175. Again, these are made up numbers. So we're going to set up the formula the way we want it. We want to find out what the amount is in 2019 dollars. We're going to plug in our $10,000 salary. That's our year T. And this is our price level in 2019. This is our price level in 1995. After you calculate all this, so $10,000 in our example, $10,000 in 1995 in 2019, it is worth $13,358 roughly. So again, this should illustrate how to calculate or convert different dollar figures into current dollars. Now you should also be able to work backwards. So if I gave you 2019 dollars and I asked you to calculate how much this would be worth in 1995, you should be able to manipulate this function and work backwards. So again, be comfortable with both ways. You're going to need to know the formula, and you're allowed to have your book and your notes on the exam. So just make sure you highlight that somewhere to make your life a little easier. All right, class, now we're going to talk about unemployment. So you can also refer to my previous video I posted about unemployment. This is just another practice problem. So I would give you an output of a country. You have 2 years, 2012, 2013. I give you your population, so your overall population, your adult population, so individuals 16 and over, number of unemployed, so 7.4, 8.1, number of employed, 105.2 and 104.2. Again, these are all in millions. So first thing you should be able to do for each one of these is calculate labor force participation rate, LF rate is labor force participation rate, unemployment rate of 2012, and then unemployment rate of 2013. Those are the basic statistics that you should know. So I'm going to walk you through. Labor force is just unemployed plus employed for that given year. So for the first one, it's going to be 7.4 plus 105.2, and what you're going to get is 112.6. So again, you're just adding these two together. 2013, you're going to do the same, 8.1 plus 104.2. So 8.1 plus 104.2, you're going to get 112.3. Again, I know these numbers are very similar, but it still has an impact on our overall differences between the 2 years. So this is each year. I'm going to circle each answer. Now our labor force participation rate, what this is going to be is your labor force divided by your adult population. So we know what our labor force is. We know what our adult population for each year is as well. So for 2012, it's going to be 112.6 divided by 168.2. And what you're going to get is roughly around 67%. So it comes out to be 66.9. I just rounded it up to 67. Now you're going to do the same for 2013. So it's 112.3 divided by 169.5. And what you get is roughly 66%. Again, the actual value is 66.3. Now, what this is showing is how much of your population is actually working. The higher the number, the better it is. We talked about this in our Zoom lecture. The higher the number, the more you're producing, the better it is for your economy. The lower the number, the less you're producing. So in times like this, because of COVID-19, you will see this number to be much lower. All right, so unemployment rate, this is going to be our last one. So unemployment rate is your number of unemployed divided by your labor force. So number of unemployed divided by our labor force that we calculated. So for 2012, it's going to be 7.4 divided by 112.6. And what you're going to get is 6.6%. Now in the United States, on average, we are at 5 or below 5%. Anywhere below that is good. Anything above it, it's a concern. Now 2013, it's going to be 8.1 divided by 112.3, and you get 7.2%. So what you notice, going from 2012 to 2013, we see an increase in our unemployment rate. We see a decrease in our labor force participation rate. And also our labor force has decreased overall. So again, these are stuff that you should know for the exam, as well as our worksheets. So basically that's the review. You guys can use this. It's another set of practice problems. It makes your life a little easier, knowing the answers, walking through the steps. If you guys have questions, drop a comment, email me. Anything to do to help you guys, I'm more than happy to. So yeah, let me know. Enjoy the rest of your day, guys.